All right. Welcome to the UX Sync for the week. First one up that I wanted to put on the list is that I had Slack threads for both of these, but I thought it'd be maybe we could sort of efficiently get through them here. There's been some feedback about automatic assignment and merge requests. So this was a change that the genesis of the change is that it was originally done on the create merge request button. Back when that button automatically created a merge request and didn't send you to the new merge request form. And we talked when we originally did that about extending it everywhere, but sort of used it as a small iteration. And then when we changed the create merge request button, people wanted this feature back. And so we put it back in and sort of turned it on for all of the create merge request forms. So the create merge request form basically defaults to assigning it to you if you create a merge request. And that's the behavior that we're driving now. But I linked to the Slack thread. I think the one that we discussed it might be a customer's. I actually don't remember. And then the feedback is sort of, there are people who don't use this as their workflow. If you look at the issue. And so I think we need to make a decision on, I guess, whether or not we want to keep that behavior or change it or do something else. I think I'll start with my preference. My preference is that I think this drives behavior for how we want the review flow to work. Like if we think about features that we're building around review flow, they revolve around those people being in the reviewer slot. Like if you think about re-request a review, which was the feature that existed before, like you had to be a reviewer to see the re-request review. Like you couldn't be an assignee or something else, even though other groups, other people who hadn't adopted reviewers were just assigning people. So I think it drives sort of the right behavior in terms of how we want people to participate in the merge request. The other thought that I had was it is weird to have an assignee field in merge request now that we have reviewers. It doesn't really make sense. Like what is and we've always sort of had this issue of like, it's hard to distinguish between what an assignee is and what a reviewer is. And so one of the things I had been thinking about, and just maybe this is a catalyst for that, was if we got rid of assignee, dramatic change, and relabeled it author, which I think more correctly aligns with how we view that field currently by automatically assigning the person. We view it sort of as an author. And then making that field populated based on actual authors of the merge request. So people who are Git authors or commit or do other things, right? So that gives you sort of a clear indication of who has authored parts of this change. So that's probably a more dramatic thing that we need to think through, but I think the immediate question is sort of, do we want to do anything about automatic assignment or just, continue to monitor feedback?
Yeah, I think we should still keep monitoring the feedback. And yeah, there are definitely different roles that people are trying to fit with the current attributes where you can add people. So before we had reviewers and we just had assignees, different teams would treat the concept of an assignee differently. And even now with reviewers, there's this example in the issue where someone says that the assignee is the one who will merge, who will have the final decision on the merge. And the reviewers are the ones who might be interested in having a look at it, but are not responsible for reviewing the code in detail. I think it's worth monitoring the issue keeping that open. But I don't have a strong opinion right now on whether we should revert it or not. Yeah, that's my quick take.
I think I mentioned this in the thread, but I am leaning towards reverting it. I don't mind either if we just want to continue monitoring it, but it does feel like a little, I mean, for the reasons you just said, we've got this assignee field that doesn't necessarily fit into the workflow anymore. And by automatically assigning the author, it feels like we strongly believe that the author and the assignee should both exist and they should both be the same person. And we're not sure that assignee should even exist in its current state. So it feels like we're doubling down on this feature that we don't necessarily plan on keeping or we don't necessarily believe in. It doesn't really work for our workflow. We just kind of do it. And it's like we just have these two things, author and assignee, they're always the same. And it doesn't make that much sense. And then we're blocking out anybody else who wants to, I mean, we can always unassign yourself, but like, it just feels a little opinionated, but we're not that opinionated about this feature right now in the way that we've just implemented it. That makes sense.
I'm fairly new to this discussion, but oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Just reading some of the feedback, it seems like some people feel very strongly about this in a not positive way. I'm not seeing like the counter to that of like, I love this. Maybe it exists somewhere. I just haven't seen it yet. But given that I'm, I suppose, supposed to be the voice of the customer, it seems like there's more negativity than positivity here.
I think that's, I wouldn't expect to see positivity in the issues. That's typically not like when somebody, people don't come to the issue tracker to say like, great feature that you just released. Thank you so much for that, right? Like they come to sort of voice their opinions about changes or other things they'd like to see. So I wouldn't necessarily expect to see that on a behavior change. The original issue, is that the, maybe let me check. Is that the one I linked to? No. Automatically assign. So there's like original issues for automatic assignment. And I think like those are, I don't know. They also don't have like a strong number of upvotes, but I think if that is your workflow, right, like which it is at GitLab, then this is like a net benefit positive change. And if it's not your workflow, it's not a positive change. I think the question sort of is, if our opinion is like, if the long-term opinion that we might take is that assignees and authors should merge and eventually become maybe the same thing, then like this sort of puts us on a path to that, in a way that like, that's sort of the behavior we're driving. It's not complete and it feels not great to people. I guess the question is for the people who that is the workflow and the workflow we want, they get a net benefit of automatically being assigned. They don't have to assign themselves. For people who don't like it, they have to unassign themselves. I mean, we shift the pain either way, right? Like if this is the workflow you want, you have to click assign to me. If this is not what you want, you have to go unassign you. Like either way, somebody is sort of left out here. I think the question is like, which one is the preferable path? Or we just continue to monitor it, and I'm fine with that too.
Assigning yourself was like an additive thing that you did. I mean, you're already filling out the MR form. It said assign to me, you click that. if it's automatically assigned to you, you create it and you're like, oh, I need to unassign myself, then it's not a big deal, but it's in the log then. Like it just looks a little more like, was that an accident? Okay. I also don't know if unassigning yourself is as one clicky as assign yourself is. So it's a tiny bit more annoying. It feels a little bit weird. And I know that's not a good description. It just feels like a slightly odd thing to have such a strong opinion on, I guess, in that we're auto assigning it. But yes, I agree that the whole assigning author thing, I think it would be really worthwhile to explore that. It's something that's been bugging me and I never really thought about it. Why do we have this thing? It's not the same as issues where you create an issue and then someone might pick it up. That doesn't really happen. It's not the same for merge requests, and yet we share the exact same, UI elements in these same areas. And it would be great if we were able to create an author section or merge the two somehow, or maybe push the workflow to be more like that final reviewer. Maybe that's just an additional section, like final reviewer gets their own little area or icon or something like that. But now I'm just blabbering on. I don't really love the feature. I'm pro revert in a not very passionate way. So if you want to continue to monitor it, that's fine. But I'm still more on the revert side of things.
I agree that I am also pro revert. Thinking back to like how I would expect this to work as an engineer who's used other tools, you really just care about the author and who's going to review your code. Like they can all be reviewers. Whoever merges it, that's fluid and is going to be variant within teams. I think possibly that's enough, and we shouldn't overcomplicate it or force people into one particular designation here that it appears that doesn't work for everyone. I think just having reviewers and an author might work pretty well. But that's something we should validate.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that I'm reading through the feedback, and it seems like a lot of the use cases were relying on complete unassignment. So no one, like neither, they didn't have an assignee or a reviewer. And someone even says that the lack of a reviewer is hard to parse from the MR list. So they understand that we're pushing people to use the reviewer field for reviewers. And okay, so let's have the assignee with the author, but still it's hard to parse if you're looking at MR lists to understand, is this an assignee or is this person a reviewer? Because we don't have a column for that. You have to hover the avatar to understand if it's an assignee or a reviewer, which makes it harder for them to adapt their existing workflow to use this auto assignment. And there's also feedback of, it seems like teams that don't use the reviewer field until today. At least that's how I interpret it, is that they have only relied on the assignee field for everything, and the reviewer field, even though they have it, they don't use it. That's how I'm seeing it. Maybe I'm misinterpreting what they're saying. I think with the amount of negative feedback that we've gotten, and I agree with you, Kai, we usually don't get positive feedback here. And this change was driven not only by how we use it, but also issues that have been created and customer feedback that it was aligned with how they worked to have the author as assignee. But I think that the amount of discussion that this is creating and backlash compared to the benefit that this change created doesn't seem, equal, doesn't seem like it's balanced. And to Annabelle's point previously, and even today, like if no one is assigned to a merge request, you can easily click on one button and it assigns to you. the opposite, one-click removal, is not there. So we haven't made it as easy to remove yourself as it was to add yourself. And because it's not a dramatic change to revert it, yeah, now I'm a bit more inclined to revert it. And because it seems that there are a lot of different things at play here, even as I was saying in the beginning, tracking your workload. It seems like some use cases people are also don't want to assign them to themselves when they're not working on it. So they're using the assignee field as a like as attention requests, more or less. You know, so like I'm assign myself, and if I'm not working on it, and I assign who, you know. So I think there are maybe too many interesting things at play here that we weren't aware when we did the seemingly small change.
Cool. That works for me. I will open up the issues to get that done and see if we can fit it in.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. The next one, hesitant to bring another hot topic up, but the next one is group assignment and merge requests. Just gonna bring all the fire today. This continues to come up. I think it fueled discussions more. I know it fueled discussions more when we, what I will continue to say is fixed quick actions to not support a group object, because group objects don't exist in reviewers. And so it sort of logically makes sense that you can't do a group in a quick action. But I think fundamentally, like the problem everyone is solving here is like finding the right reviewer in merge requests. Right. That's why everyone's assigning a group. Everyone assigns 10 people because they're like, someone will review this. Is sort of all of the feedback, I think, boils down to that. Like that's how their review flow works. Their review flows work that like I work on a team of 6 people and someone from the team of 6 people will review it. And so we just assign everyone as a reviewer. I think we have long built code review as a modeled, I think, strongly after GitLab values around like DRIs is how I would potentially phrase it. That like we think that like an individual ultimately has to be the one that reviews and merges it. And then, you know, we have concerns about, you know, delay in people responding, or there's a fancy term for like bystander effect, which is another piece here, right? Like if I assign 6 people and I just assume someone else will do it, you know, it doesn't balance workloads and other things. And so we've largely done this around individuals. And so I think two things is one, like, I know we're starting suggested reviewers work that sort of aims to solve this problem. I think this is a problem that we need to keep like focused on. I guess long term, do we want to continue to take the stance of like individuals over groups? Like a suggested reviewer is always going to be like an individual based feature, or a suggested reviewer is one day going to say like, assign this group, right? I think that's sort of the question. And if that's a path that we think we might go down, then like maybe we need to somehow think about what that user experience looks like. I think if it's not, then like, you know, I'm fine to continue saying like individuals, not groups. Here's what we're doing. That's my backstory and setup. Someone else can go.
Yeah, I still have
I was just, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say I still have to read through, because there's that huge thread in Slack with 39 replies of people talking about this, and so haven't had the chance to look at it. Is there a valid? So, first question: is it to assign to a group and have like the name of the group as the one that is assigned, or to assign to the people that are members of a group?
When it worked before, when you could use a quick action before to specify a group, what would happen is if I specified code review backend and there's 6 members of that group, the quick action would have made all 6 of those members a reviewer. It wouldn't have made the group a reviewer. It would have made all 6 of those people a reviewer of the merge request. So that was the previous behavior that people were relying on.
Yeah. Okay. And have you seen a valid use case for that? I know it's not aligned with what we think would be ideal, but I'm just thinking, in some teams, they might be workflows where at certain time of day, you will go and look at merge requests that are assigned to your group and pick them up as you see fit and review them. Yeah, just wondering if there are really any valid use cases from your perspective.
I think from my perspective, there's not necessarily a valid use case, because what I have seen in feedback and the way most people have described it in issues where they've complained or offered feedback, complained is a strong word, offered feedback, is that it's because that's how their team works. They assign it to the group so that someone can pick it up. And then internally, the team sort of has their own culture and way to do that. And it's not that the tools that they use necessarily does that, if that makes sense. So like, ultimately, everyone where they said they've assigned 6 people, all of them have come back and said, yeah, well, somebody picks it up on the team. And you ask like how, and they're like, well, the team just like, it just happens. Somebody decides they're going to review it and they review it and the other people get unassigned or whatever. Like it just is a magical thing that happens like culturally inside of the team. So yeah, from my perspective, like what that confirms is that there's still an individual that ultimately has to do something, which is I think how we've looked at the tool, right? I think what I think it's a symptom of is like, it's hard for people to know, who do I ask to review my merge request? And the answer was, I assign 10 people and hope it works.
But it was also like, I need this to be reviewed by the backend team. And we don't have those kind of groups like that right now. I think in some design I saw, I don't know if I made it actually, but like, it would be cool if code owners would do this, right? If you changed a file in here, it would tell you, you need backend reviewers, and it would show up in the sidebar, like, here's what you need to review. Or it wouldn't suggest a person, it would suggest the role, which is kind of what this sounds like. This person is assigning a group of backend engineers because it needs to be reviewed by the backend developer team. And on small teams, that sounds totally feasible. In fact, I know someone who worked at a small company and they did just that. They never assigned anything. It was just an open list. And whoever looked at the open list would just assign themselves. They didn't assign a group, but they didn't assign anyone.
Yeah, I would agree. I think like in a small team, it's potentially feasible. I think code owners, if I were to like logically think through GitLab and how we would want to drive usage and people into features, I think code owners is the way we would want you to do this, right? Like we would want you to have your entire repo sectioned out in code owners, whether or not you used approvals. And then everything that came up in review, we would want to suggest someone out of your code owners list to like review that file. I think that's like, ultimately that is where we would want to be with like how we do reviewers. The question, I guess, is like, even at that end state, if you've specified a group in code owners, which is totally possible, you can say code review backend owns this group of files. Would we suggest the group to review you, or would we still want to like try and continue to make that logic and experience smarter, where we'd say, here's 2 people from code review backend that, you know, only have one MR open and aren't busy in GitLab status and all these other things that like continue to make like GitLab the tool, sort of the way we drive that capacity. Because if you look at Danger, which would be like like our reviewer roulette that is built inside of Danger, it is very much individual based, despite knowing all of these other things about you. It knows that you're a member of front end, back end, maintainer, not a maintainer. It knows when you're out of office. It knows when you're not. It knows sort of all of those things. And I think that would be like, in my mind, that's the ultimate experience to drive like somehow in product, right? Like, how do we drive it so you get the 5 people or however many you need to actually get that merge request merged, not pinging huge groups of teams? What if your code owners is 50 people? Like, that's a huge group, right?
With suggested reviewers and what the code owners and everything we were just talking about, proposals of showing what you need to have this reviewed, none of that seems to address the teams that don't want any of it, and they just like working with these open merge requests that aren't assigned to anyone. It seems to be a fairly common workflow from what I've heard, and one that does work. Not everyone wants to assign it to somebody.
I am of the opinion that we should build a tool with opinions and workflows. And if we cover 80%, I think most people say that because there's not an experience that, you know, works correctly or is understood, right? It doesn't exist today. Most tools do not assign people to do this. And so it doesn't exist or work today. I think if we build a good product that does what we want it to do, most people will be happy. My goal is not to make 100% of people happy. That's an impossible goal to achieve. And I'm certainly willing to sacrifice people along the way if they don't necessarily like the opinion, right? Like that sounds harsh, but like if we want to make 100% of people happy, I'm going to have a settings page that looks 10 times worse than our settings page already looks. Like if you look at like, you know, we can go back to automatic assignment. The option literally what people were asking for is like, give us options, give us more configuration to make the product more complicated so we can do whatever we want. And in my opinion, I think that's not the right answer. I think we should have a viewpoint and a workflow that we want. And if that doesn't work, then we can optimize, we can go figure out how to like what changes we can make when we get there. But like, I don't know that we need to be making concessions along the way.
Is there a particular reason why we removed the ability to add a group and have it just parse out to the individuals? Like, what was the decision there? Was that because we have an opinion that that's not how it should be done? Or
it was 2 things. One is that opinion, and the other was there was bugs in it. Let me think how to do this. There were some bugs in the existing implementation that were not ideal. So part of it was that, and then part of it was like, well, we don't necessarily need to solve for that if we just make that not possible.
I thought that it shouldn't have existed in the first place, and that the whole thing was actually a bug. Am I not thinking of the right thing? Group assigning with a quick action. Was that supposed to ever happen?
It was a side effect of the way quick actions were implemented that you could do it. Because our autocompletes automatically show group names. So the way quick actions work is it's the quick action and then it completes whatever's after it. Well, as soon as you put an @ symbol, groups show up because the autocomplete actions for like helping you complete groups or individual names can populate groups.
I mean, I sort of like that idea of you being able to quickly assign a group and it just breaks it out into the individuals. Seems like it doesn't necessarily go against our idea of like an individual is responsible for this at the end of the day, but it does allow people to quickly assign a group of people to an MR, which is what they want to do, and just be able to do it faster.
Yeah, I think even if it's, a group of people, imagine a like a group of directors that you want to regularly assign to specific issues or merge requests. You have to always add them manually. So I see the use case and I understand your philosophy, Kai. And I think that there's a use case to, or there will always be that use case where I want to assign to a group of people because I want all of those people actually, not just one in that group, but all of them to actually work on something. And then there's that other use case where what people want today is, I want to assign to a group of people because someone, like one or two inside of that group, will eventually pick it up. And Kai, you mentioned, building a great experience for that. And, we're not there yet. And I think to the customer's eyes and the user's eyes, it just feels a much smaller step instead of having suggested reviewers and other smart functionality. Just, hey, let us assign to a group, which unfortunately for all purposes, we inadvertently had that functionality. So it's out there. So they're like, hey, it was easy. It was there. You removed it. Why can't we have it again? And there are some, problems with, abuse. And for example, if you want to assign a group that not all people have access to the project, for example. But I think I think Gabe mentioned that in the issue, the internal discussion issue, that we have this inconsistency right now where you can bulk notify people, like a group, like all, at all, or something like that, but you can't assign them. And it kind of generates the same frustration, I guess. So I don't know. I'm inclined to allowing bulk group assignment, but yeah, it's not an easy issue. I do think that we should encourage individual assignments by building that great experience. But until we get there, yeah, I just think that people are trying to get things done and it just seems like an easy thing to do. And we're saying, hey, no, we're not going to do that. We're actually going to build this amazing experience that automatically gives you someone, but we're not there yet. Yeah, I have to run, but you can stick around and I'll read the agenda later.
Okay, thanks, Peter. I think the only other thought would be, this is like a difference of parity between quick actions and the UI. And so I guess the question is like, do we need to follow up, or are we comfortable leaving sort of a difference of user experience between quick actions and the UI? Because the UI does not and has not ever supported that behavior.
Difference is fine with me. If anything, it'll drive people to use the quick actions more. We have other things that are only in quick actions. Remember, I listed that somewhere. I'm never going to find it, but there's somewhere where we have a list of things you can only do in quick actions. So I don't think this should be any different. I mean, it can be, but it's not a big deal if it is different.
Cool, I have to run.
Cool. Thanks, everyone. We could skip 4. We can leave it as read only. Or I can, the TLDR is we're going to turn off attention requests. And then look at what our options are. Pedro and I talked about it. There's a longer agenda of a not recorded call earlier from Pedro and I. So you can look at that. And then Pedro did this. And then I'll probably put something out this week and go from there.
Why not recorded?
We just didn't. I didn't think about it necessarily. It wasn't intentional to like not record it. I was just specifying that there was not a recording in case someone was asking for it. Sorry.
Okay.
Number 5.
Yeah, I created that issue to follow up on some of the beautifying UI things from last milestone that are code review specific. Well, most of them are code review specific because that's basically all we did. There are some things that need to be addressed before we do anything really. The feature flag is still on for the sidebar in both the marketing website and the GitLab repo, but we can't do anything. We can't do anything really until we continue to iterate on it. So I have this fixed header thing, a sticky header, kind of like issues. Finished the design for that, and I just pinged Phil, and it sounds like he might have some time this milestone to work on it. The other thing I'd really love, nice to have, is to feature flag on fixing the top nav. I talked with Austin about that a little bit. Again, this would be under a separate feature flag because I'm adding another fixed element. I realize this is only in merge requests. Austin and Sid and other people, I think, have been working on general navigation updates. And one of the things that I'm curious specifically is why we still have that top nav fixed and what purpose it's really having across the whole experience. Turns out that the most clicked item is the Tanuki or the home button. And the second clicked button, I think, is the user preferences. I don't know what the hierarchy is for the other items, but I'm not sure that they need to be available across all pages. And I know this isn't code review specific, but it'd be super cool if we could maybe work on that this milestone, put it behind a feature flag and see what the feedback is.
You mean the when you say top nav, just so like the one that contains like the search box and to-dos and issues and merge request dropdown and all that. Okay.
Yeah.
I think I would be sad if that bar was not there all the time, just as my own personal feedback. I click on, that's how I navigate the page. I like scroll down, do what I need to do, and then I click to-dos to go to the next thing that I have to do. Like that's my primary source of navigation in GitLab.
That's
I
what
also
I'm
live in
expecting people to be
to-dos.
mad about. So yeah, first of all, not everyone uses to-dos. So we've already got like the split between people who use notifications, and then they were upset about the notification control being moved from the sidebar to the dropdown. And then we have people who use to-dos who don't care about notifications, but if we unfix the top nav, maybe you'll be angry. I'm assuming we're going to get some negative feedback, but I'd like to know why. Like knowing that you use to-dos to navigate is super valuable. Do other people? I do too, but like I don't mind scrolling up. There's also the keyboard shortcut. I have those turned off, but people like keyboard shortcuts. I'm sure you can do GT or something and it will fling you off into your to-dos. It's just now that the top nav, I don't know if you noticed, it's also 8 pixels taller as of last milestone. And it's just taking up, I know 8 pixels doesn't sound like a lot, but it's a
adds
lot. So yeah, now I'm going to add another fixed thing, and I just didn't want to keep on adding fixed elements. Again, I know that's merge request specific, and now I'm making a global change for my own personal bias, but just want to see what the feedback is, and then we can quickly turn it off if people really hate it and figure out like why they hate it. What do we need to do? And also I came up with this one merge request, which was not, it was silly. I'm going to link it in an agenda, but I made the to-dos and all those things in the left sidebar that would be present across all pages, so that when you scrolled, you'd still have your to-dos, merge requests, and issues available. Don't think that was a very good design either, but it was there. So my point to this was, Phil said he already has some time to work on the sticky header, which I think is the most important piece to getting this moving along, because it'll include the to-do button, and the branch, which has come up 100 times. That'll be across all tabs.
Okay.
And then I didn't know if anyone else, like if Stanislav or Thomas had some time this milestone, if they wanted to pick up anything, if I should add that to tomorrow's agenda, or if I should just stick it in the Slack channel.
Yeah, I don't know about the unfix at the top now. I think the sticky header one, just tag Andre and I in the issue and we can figure out how to label it and put it in the milestone. I think the unfixing of the top nav, I don't know what capacity will look like. We'll have to ask. There is new freed capacity, but I don't know if it's on back end or front end. So we've got to just figure that out.
Okay.
Yeah, or you can drop them in the
Great.
planning issue. Either one works.
Okay.
Cool. Well, thanks everyone. It was good to see you. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday and see each other again.
Bye.
Bye.